It's time for another edition of Saturday with Seniors, brought to you by Hemingway General Contractors. We do this each Saturday morning at 10 a.m. And if you're looking for someone who can take care of your heating system, Hemingway's has Lux Air Furnaces, which are 95% efficient. That means gas savings for you. Plus, they come with the best warranty around. They offer a 10-year parts and labor warranty, and Hemingway's includes that with your furnace package for free. So big thank you to Hemingway General Contractors, 662-6997. And today, Jim Howe joins us. A lot of people know you from a lot of things, teaching and animal work and everything else. And nobody thinks of you as a senior, but you're just about old enough. You're a young senior.
I'm a young senior.
Young at heart senior. Well, how are you today, Jim?
I'm great. It's a great day.
It is a wonderful day. Well, thank you for joining us. Can I ask how old you are? What year you were born?
I was born in 1949. I'm 73.
73 years old. So where were you born?
Right here in Wellsboro, Pennsylvania.
Wow. And were your parents from this area originally? Or did
Yes, they were from Wellsboro and Tioga.
So how far back does your family go to Tioga County then? Your roots?
I live right now on a Century Farm. It's 160-some years old.
And your family cleared that farm?
Yes, they did.
I can imagine the work clearing a farm back then. Every time I think about what it takes to take out stumps by hand and how big they were in those days.
And we still have some of the stumps in the fences they built.
Wow, it's fascinating. Yeah. So family farm, 160 years, and you live on the farm.
Yes, they do.
So tell me a little bit about what it was like growing up on the farm as a kid. What type of farm was it when you were a kid?
I was a great neighborhood. We had all kinds of kids that could come down, and everything from ice skating in the winter to throwing apples at each other.
We've done the apples with a baseball bat. That's always kind of fun.
We put them on sticks, and they would go a long distance.
Now, where exactly is this farm? What area?
Up Mitchell Creek outside of Tioga. It's about a couple miles out of Tioga.
Mm-hmm. So tell me about school. Where did you go to school then?
I went to school in Williamson, and then I went for my graduate work over in Mansfield University.
Mm-hmm. So elementary school, Williamson was probably a pretty new school then, I'm guessing? Or
yeah, eventually Williamson was new. I started in the old school in Tioga. Mm-hmm. That school burned, so they moved us to Lawrenceville.
I didn't know Tioga had a school that burned. I just learned something.
Back where the swimming pool is.
So you started there, and somewhere in the 50s, early 50s, I'm guessing, or mid-50s, late 50s, in that range. The school, were you attending the school when it burned?
Yes, we were, yes. And then they moved us to Lawrenceville, and then we moved to R.B. Walters and Williamson.
Yeah. So the school that burned down, was it a wooden building? I mean, totally destroyed? So
I'm not sure how many stories, but it was a tall, beautiful, nice old building.
So that must have been I guess a bad feeling as a kid, your school burning down. I mean, what
it was kind of like an adventure. Then we moved to Lawrenceville and had a lot of fun, met new friends there, and then from there to Williamson.
Yeah. So as a kid, you mentioned ice skating and throwing apples at each other and stuff. What were some of the other fun things that you enjoyed in those years?
Loved soccer, swimming in the streams, and just playing in the creeks with our friends and ponds and just that kind of thing.
Now, the dam wasn't in Tioga yet at that point either, so 15 went right through Tioga.
Yes, it did.
And
the whole winding road from Mansfield through to New York State.
At that time, Tioga and Mansfield were about half the distance apart by road as they are now. You didn't have to go all the way north 4 miles, then all the way back south.
Very twisting road that came from Mansfield through. Caused a lot of accidents and different things, but it was a fun road.
Yeah.
It was right down next to the river in some places.
I've seen the old pictures. Roads were a lot narrower then, too.
Oh, they were. They were.
There wasn't a big breakdown lane and then a guide rail and then all that space over there. So you remember when they built the dams, when that was put in back in 72?
Yeah, it was after the 72 flood. And,
or actually, we should maybe talk about the floods first, and let's go chronologically. Okay. We're kind of bouncing all over the place here, but so many neat things in that area, so much that area has been through. So the floods of 72, you remember? Tell me about your memories of those.
Yes. When I got out of the service, I was teaching in Olean, New York. And the warnings were coming out on the dangers of the rising water. And I had a U-Haul behind a Jeep. And I kind of floated a couple times, but I got back to Tioga County and parked the U-Haul and went out with friends to watch the roads disappear.
And you were up high enough so your farm was okay through this pretty much?
Yeah, where my father's house was, the stream came nearby, and 5 times my father had us go in and take all of the tools and things out of his sheds, and then he said, no, it's not getting any higher, so we put them back. And then we took them out again, and it kept going. And then so we abandoned my father, I remember, and went out with our Jeep and went up to Mill Creek and met some friends up there, and eventually the roads wouldn't let us back home. We had to go on the high roads to get back.
To get back all the way around. Do you remember going into town, your first sight, seeing the devastation of the Tioga River through there?
I didn't go in by myself. I was a member of the Pennsylvania National Guard that was here in Wellsboro, and we went out to kind of rescue people and help them out. And at the same time I worked with the National Guard, I had a daycare center in R.B. Walters, and I had lots of kids that their parents were either had problems from the flood or were helping others, and so we helped out a lot of kids and had a ball.
That's an interesting way to phrase it. Had a ball, but these people.
We did. I mean, it was a terrible time.
It feels good to help people, but the devastation in Tioga, right in town, there was hardly a building that didn't get some sort of damage to it. When you look at the pictures, at least it appeared that way.
Both Tioga and Lawrenceville.
Yeah,
it was
Mansfield, Blossburg too. The entire Tioga River. If you were along that, there was serious devastation on there. So you were involved in the National Guard.
Yes, it was. I started out while I was in college. I was trained to be first. We were tank support. I was trained to be a medic, and then I got back home from the training, and they made us infantry support or tank support, and I went from being a medic to taking mortars and shooting at people with mortars. So it was a great. It met so many great people. Yeah. And we were involved in the flood. There was a 3-mile island, kind of like a truckers' strike. We had to help the truckers through there. But the 72 flood was actually the largest thing we did, I think, as the National Guard.
I have the history of the flood book. I remember seeing the National Guard outside Mansfield Guard in the liquor store there. They're all standing outside.
We even guarded it. Eventually we found out we were guarding a pond that had chickens out in the middle, and we kind of saved some chickens.
You always loved animals, didn't you? Not sure how well chickens swim. I've never actually.
Oh, we didn't give them a chance. We just had the water went down. We pumped the pond. Yeah. We found out what we were pumping was a pond, and we pumped it down. The chickens kind of walked out of the. So.
Also, when I think of Lawrenceville or Tioga, I think also of the gas well that caught on fire there. And I want to say that was about the same time period.
It was. I'd seen the flames from a distance. That's as close as I ever got to that.
They had to bring in folks from Texas there to put that fire out. That
famous groups, I understand.
Yeah. That was quite a big thing. So when Tioga, when they decided they were going to, after the flood happened, they came in with putting up the dam. How did the town feel about that? Were people for it, against it, because it was going to protect them from flooding, but they were losing some prime farmland and a route out of town? What was the feeling in town?
I think they're basically for it. There were some people opposed to any change, like in everything that happens. A lot of the farmland in the Tioga side was being used in the other side where the Hammond Lake is. It was pretty good farmland, but it really wasn't that active at the time. Mm-hmm. And so it was a plus eventually. Yeah. But it took growth from people trying to figure out what to do with this thing.
I've talked with a lot of people who lived in Lambs Creek, and of course that whole village and where Mill Creek comes in there. There used to be a truck stop there and a restaurant. Yeah. I've seen pictures of that. It's amazing. We used to be under that when you go to the Mill Cove Bridge. If you look down to your left, what's underwater there now. Well, they removed it before they took it out. But a little village between Mansfield and there. Do you remember going through that?
Yeah, there was a couple. There was a restaurant. I'm trying to think of the name of it now. That's up on top.
They had a hotel and a restaurant, and there was a towing company, I believe, at one time.
That's still out of the water. That's still up on top. The road kind of came up to that and made a curve. And it was something that seemed to be always there, and then all of a sudden, everything really changed.
Just disappeared. So let's go back to your first vehicle. Going back to your high school years.
It was an old Buick LeSabre. Convertible, light blue convertible, and my dad kind of had it, and I eventually got it from him, and it was a great touring vehicle for a bunch of us. We would do all kinds of things with that vehicle.
All kinds of things.
One time, right after the flood, we went out through an old cornfield with that car, and we were not in any condition really to drive, but we saw a basketball, and we decided to go save the basketball, and that old car took us through that.
And saved a basketball.
We saved a basketball. Almost lost a couple friends saving it, but we saved it.
Yeah. Do you have other memories of things that were around in Tioga then that aren't there now? You said that where the school was, that pool get put in shortly after, or did kids swim in the creek, or where was swimming done when you were a kid?
It was a while later. It wasn't that long that they put in the pool. And that became the focal point of a lot of us, learning how to be lifeguards, learning how to swim, learning how to, just have fun.
Yeah.
But not a lot has changed. There was, which was Fred's Woodshed, was a bowling alley. And we used to meet with friends at that bowling alley, but then that kind of went to the side, and then Fred's Woodshed kind of took over.
Yeah. And then from there, it goes on to whatever.
Yeah, it goes on. Whatever it is now. It basically has not changed a lot. It's undergoing, just little changes here and there. A lot of buildings have come down. There's been a few fires and different things taking them down, but the old is still there.
So you got your first car, and did you keep yourself out of trouble with that car, or were you?
Yes.
It's over 50 years. You can talk about it now.
Yeah, we stayed out of trouble. We were at the edge of it once in a while, but we just were a group that had fun. One of our favorite things to do was go out in the springtime and catch frogs. And a wet day, all the frogs would be along the road, and we'd go out and we'd catch the frogs. We'd count them, and then we'd count how many we got, and we'd kind of put them back. And
a frog roundup.
Yeah, well, a frog roundup. That was a highlight, and at the same time there would be deer. It just was just kids having good fun.
Sure.
And the only mistake we ever made was we had an old Rambler, and we counted the frogs that we took out of the Rambler, and we thought one or two got out, that they had not got out. The days got cold, so we closed the car up. And about 3 weeks later, when it warmed up and we got to the car again, those frogs did not get out of the car originally.
Oh,
we sold the Rambler.
Smell included, huh? So the farm that you grew up on when you were a kid, was it a fully modernized farm? Were you using horses? Obviously, when the farm was built 100 plus years ago, they were, but had it already been modernized when you were a kid?
It was horses. There was at one time 7 working teams of horses on the farm, and they left kind of like the day before I was born. I did not get the opportunity to be with all those horses. The farm had started with dairy and tobacco. It was a tobacco farm. And we had 2 big tobacco buildings that have, since when I was young, they left. They tore them down. But a lot of my ancestors that lived on the farm had other jobs. My grandfather was a railroad engineer and different things. So it grows stones very well. It's one of those farms that grows stones. At times, before it died, we had chestnut trees. There were still the remnants of all those chestnut trees that have died. But then it switched to mostly beef cattle.
You mentioned the tobacco farming. I know that there was quite a bit of tobacco grown in the Tioga area. Or am I wrong? Was there quite a few tobacco farms?
There was. It was one of these. It was like a good cash crop.
I was going to say, why was it popular there? But I don't hear about it like growing in other areas of Tioga County. That was growing in, and then also, I guess, sort of what happened to the tobacco industry.
I think it just faded away. I think a lot of the farms that had that had very rich soils, and we only had one piece of our farm that had rich soil. The rest of it had rocks. That kind of thing.
Better for growing grapes.
Yeah, it would
probably a winery than a. Some of the tobacco barns still stand in Tioga.
Yes, as you go into Tioga from Wellsboro, on the left, you'll see one of them.
Where they dried out the tobacco, and it's just, I know people don't smoke like they used to, and that's a good thing, but they went out long before that trend in smoking took that downturn. Yep. So I was always kind of curious what happened. I remember going through Connecticut as a kid and seeing tobacco farms there too, and I don't think they exist there either.
I think you could grow it here, but there's other places that grow it much better.
Yeah.
And so that would, downstate and different places that gravitated to.
So your love of animals that you have now, you do some rescue work, and tell everybody a little bit what you do right now with animals.
21 years ago, a group of us as friends, led by Sue Cook, saw that the SPCA was forced to euthanize a lot of animals, and there was no other option. But people were still saying they're not helping me. So we decided in the process, Sue went out to Best Friends in Utah, and then later I went out and saw and worked there for a little while. And we decided to start Second Chance Animal Sanctuaries. And it's been going for 21 years now. We've had our facility thanks to a lady named Dorothy Condict that donated 10 acres of land to us. It's going strong. We are full all the time. We hold about 12 dogs, 3 dozen cats, and we're packed. And we're a complete nonprofit. We don't get any funds from the state. It comes from the hearts of people. And all of our facilities, we write grants, and it comes through that. But it's a great thing. We designed it for Tioga County, and it's anchored here.
I didn't realize that you were involved with the very startup of that 21 years ago.
Yes, Sue,
yep.
There was quite a few of us started, a handful of us, and through time they've gone in different directions.
Yeah.
But we've kept the banner of what we wanted to do going.
Did you ever imagine that it would go from that first time you saw that's 10 acres or whatever of land to what it is today?
No, I envisioned it going for a while, then it would join with someone else or whatever, and I would once I retired, get a chance to travel, and I just travel to Second Chance, it seems. And but it's a great endeavor. It's full of good hearts, volunteers, and donations and support from this whole county. We're there because of what they want.
Yeah. They're certainly putting the animals first. And so before that, there wasn't a shelter in Tioga County, really?
No, there was the Pennsylvania SPCA across from Weiss. Andy McAvane, which people probably remember Andy. He's still around. Great guy. He was in charge of it later on when it closed or different times. In the process, he changed. He was on our board for a while. He gave us fantastic advice. But there was that, and then eventually it closed, and Animal Care Sanctuary from Bradford County took over, and then they left, and so we are the remaining.
I think we're seeing more compassion for animals now than there was before. It seems like there's more shelters and
there is.
Popping up, which is good.
We find that there are so many good hearts out there. There are some people that make mistakes with their animals, but through educating them, working with kids, and doing different things, the tides are changing even more, we think, for people having that passion and compassion for animals.
Johnny Putnam, the one who sings the Tioga County song that we play on Sunday Night Oldies every night, was involved with the SPCA, if I understand right.
Yes,
And I'm guessing you knew Johnny one way or another.
Yes, There's a lot of new voices and old voices floating around the county, and they just pop up all over the place. Every month we have someone stepping up and joining in with us and just savoring their time with animals, as we do.
And you've got that big, giant Burmese mountain dog, right?
I did.
You did? I'm sorry, your dog's no longer...
Yeah, his name was Entei, and a lot of people in the county know Entei, and he was lost or placed out by the canyon. He was in the woods for a year. And then when a group of great people saved him, brought him to the sanctuary, and I sat for a couple of months, and finally he adopted me. But for 2 years, he just went with kids. He just was kind of an ambassador for not only Second Chance, but dogs and animals and life in the world. But this last summer, his stomach turned, and which was where the stomach rolls on an animal, often it's a death sentence. He survived that. Then he got a bad infection. He survived that. And then he turned around and got a blockage, and he survived that. But about the beginning of this month, he got a bloat from all these other factors, and we couldn't save him the last time.
Oh.
But he was a great dog.
Yeah, I remember he was always by your side and really by your side all the time.
I still have, I call it his truck.
Yeah.
And he never lived long enough to help me make the payments on the truck. But he was a great dog, and just people, even today, just ask about him. And I'm trying to carry on some of the pluses, the things that...
The memories are, that along the way, sure. So do you have kids in the family? I don't know too much of your background.
Yes, I have two. I have son Jonah living outside of Muncie, and I have a daughter, Jayanna, living not too far from my house on another piece of land.
Now, in between National Guard and all this other animal rescue, you also were a teacher through this time period too. For how many years were a teacher?
That was my calling. It still is. I just love teaching. I taught for 40 years.
40 years?
I taught a couple of years up in Olean, New York, and then the rest of the time was in the Wellsboro Area School District.
And what was your subject?
I taught 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, and almost all the subjects.
I guess in those grades you're across the board with everything.
Yeah. And it was a great experience. I just loved working with. I learned a lot from the kids that I taught. So.
Amazing what you can learn from kids if you let them teach you.
Yes.
Now, Jason Bump, who works here, was he one of your students?
Yes, he was.
I don't know if there's HIPAA laws on this, but can you talk about him?
No, I can't. I'm not allowed to talk about it. Especially if they know they're listening.
I was hoping you could tell me a story on him.
There's always good stories. I think the thing is, I still, in my mind, picture them in elementary school, and they come up to me and say hi, and as soon as I find their name, I'll figure out who they were, but kids change.
You know that you had them as a student if they call you Mr. Howe.
Yes.
And they're an adult, right? I mean, that's kind of the... So how long ago did you stop teaching?
Like 10 years ago, so I've stopped the actual teaching, but the Second Chance, we started a program called CareWorks, which is CareWorks and CareWords, which is still teaching. But from teaching, I learned that you never stop learning, though. And so I'm still not teaching, but I'm learning still.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you're never too old to keep learning in this world. And it feels to me like the world is changing faster now than it was when I was younger. And I'm guessing you have that same feeling that, 5 years at a time, a couple new inventions would come out. And now it seems like every year, if you don't keep up with what's new, you're behind.
Yeah, I think that's true. I watched the world kind of head to little machines. And I watched the kids are kids no matter what the world is like. But the things that they have in front of them to challenge them or stop them are just so extreme and so quickly changing in the world.
When you grew up as a kid, you didn't have a TV, right?
No, we had each other, which was the greatest thing. Our neighbor kids, we'd get together. Our parents would allow us to go exploring and say, come back for supper. In today's world, that doesn't happen very much. Kids are kind of guided for and protected because of all the things that supposedly are out there.
Just heading to the woods, there's stuff to learn. Turning over rocks, finding salamanders, climbing trees. Those are all things that I love doing too. And I think it's a shame that kids just aren't getting out to do as much of that.
I think if parents can do one thing for their kids is let them get out there and do that.
Yeah.
The lessons of life they learn are incredible.
Yeah.
I watched the focus of kids going to like a laptop or a cell phone or whatever to things. And kids, I find, sometimes get caught up in thinking that life only has one direction, and from their not being exposed to all these other things. And I remember one of the lessons that I tried to get across with kids is, when you get trapped in one direction, remember you're like a circle. You've got 1 degree, there's 359 more degrees. Just turn, and the world starts again for you. And I think some kids in our world today don't see that there are alternatives to things that are at the time trapping them.
Absolutely. I'm feeling like you need to give up when there's so many options that we're just not looking at.
Just turn, and it's a fresh world.
Yeah. So do you remember your first TV then? Did you see the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show?
Well, those of you who remember the first TV, you really weren't watching much because snow was not on the ground. The snow was on the television.
People don't understand what snow is on TV when we had analog TV. Now it's digital. You realize it's been 10 years since the old TVs, 10, 15 years since we had a snowy screen. Yeah,
it is.
And you had to go out and play with the antenna, or Dad would have you hold the antenna.
And they were small. Once in a while, people had to climb, but fathers usually climbed up on the roof and would stand up there and turn the antenna and yell down.
We had a motorized one, so you could actually rotate.
Oh, you had a motorized one.
Yeah, we were high tech when I was a kid, so you could rotate and get the Boston stations where I grew up, or you could get the New Hampshire, Rhode Island, pointing at whatever direction you were pointing. So how did you get your news then as a kid? Your parents, when you were younger, was it newspaper, I guess, if it wasn't TV?
It wasn't as worldly as the news is today. Your news sometimes was a neighbor passing on what another neighbor said. The radio was the bigger source in newspapers. But we were not exposed to what was happening that day in the world as much as today. Today, it's like this minute it's happening.
Second, if there's a major event in the United States, 90% of the people know within 5-10 minutes.
Yes.
It's unbelievable how fast. If I remember right, the first presidential election, it took 48 hours before more than half the country knew who won, to get to out to the rural areas. And
I think the first time that I ever was locked into the news as it was happening was when JFK was assassinated. It seemed like that was where the world, and people say it did, it made a change. You became more aware of the world and the dangers and the good too. But it seemed like nothing was ever the same quiet as it used to be.
Well, all of a sudden we have these 24/7 news networks that have to fill 24/7 with news. So it changed the whole style of it's not the days of Walter Cronkite news. It's a different style of news than we.
Yeah, we kind of we didn't worry about the news because we weren't exposed to the news. We didn't have that as the main focus of our day. Our focus was to get out there and have fun, go live life.
Enjoy life, yeah. Well, very interesting. Any words of wisdom that you want to share before we're getting, believe it or not, we're getting near the end of our program here?
Oh, the one of 360-degree turn, change your life. It seems hard, but once you do it, you realize there's more to life than just the one direction that might be taking you. And so I know my life is turned, and they're just like completely different directions. And each one that I've been forced to go into or whatever, you float to the top.
Yeah.
And I think people have to realize you can float up out of any situation.
9 times out of 10, when something bad happens, you ask them a year later how they're doing with, like, they got fired from their job or whatever, and then usually they're saying they're doing better.
Yes,
they found a better job, they found a better whatever, but somehow we always just assume every change is going to give us worse. And
it hasn't. For me, it hasn't. It's been different, a lot of unexpected things, but the unexpected sometimes good. Often is good.
Well, thank you. Jim Howe, our guest today on Saturday with Seniors here on KC 101, brought to you by Hemingway General Contractors. We do this each Saturday morning at 10 a.m. And if you missed any of this episode or want to hear any of the previous episodes, go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com, and search KC 101 Hometown Country, and you can listen to all the previous programs. Again, thank you to Hemingway General Contractor. You can reach them at 662-6997. If you need any furnace work done or other work, they can take care of all that for you and more at Hemingway General Contractor. Thank you so much for stopping by.